If you're heading off to Disney and don't know where to start, click yourself over to MiceChat and you're out of the dark. They take the dizzy out of Disney for you and for me. So come on, it's MiceChat, that's where it's at. We're talking MiceChat, that's where it's at. You know it's MiceChat, the site is the bomb. Come on, it's MiceChat.com.
Welcome back to MICETUBE Live from wherever you are. That's where we're recording right now. We have with us today our regular crew, Logan and Chloe, but we're joined by a very special guest. We have Bill Zanetti with us today, who lives in Florida. And Bill's a longtime friend. He's been with MiceChat since the very earliest days, and now he actually teaches theme park classes at University of Central Florida, I believe. Bill, welcome aboard. How are you?
Good. How are you, Dusty?
I am fantastic, and I'm totally jealous of your set there. Looks like you've got your own nighttime show going on.
Putting us in the game.
Hey,
For real.
I'm here in San Francisco, clearly, and it feels just like Orlando here. It's really strange.
That is incredible. I am so jealous. I need to have a whole construction crew, safely distanced, of course, come in and completely redo my house. So did you give up a whole room for this? How have you created this set?
Well, I have a pretty small place. It's just a 2-bedroom place, and I don't have a roommate in this room, so I just kind of converted my extra bedroom into a studio, and I have a lot of books in here and a few other things. So if the camera went the other direction, it looks like a disaster area, but this looks beautiful, right? So that's
just like the theme parks, right? You know, on stage, it all looks perfect. And then you go backstage and realize there's no magic here.
Yeah, no, you should see my view, but I can see you. You look great.
There you go.
How's
And that's
life
magical. I tell you, aside from the fact that we're all kind of sheltering at home and it's weird and uncomfortable, really making the most of it and spending so much time chatting with people. I've never been on so many calls and conferences and stuff in my life. So I'm really getting to know a lot of folks better, and we're doing a lot of MiceChat articles and content. So it's actually been a good experience in a way. So yeah, it's a little bit unnerving and stressful, but it's also a time of growth and some exciting things. What about you guys? Logan, have you had anything good come out of this experience?
I've been able to catch up on my backlog of some movies, so that's kind of nice. I mean, that's really about it, unfortunately. Theme parks are closed, sports are off. My poor Dodgers, they've not played a single game at the season. I'm just waiting for stuff to start getting going again. I don't know. What about you,
We'll
Chloe?
send you a bunch of stuff to do. Chloe, anything good happening to you? Was there a silver lining to this dark cloud?
The silver lining for me is when everything gets back to normal, like most people. I mean,
You're
days
just looking
are
for
going
the
by,
future.
Yeah, days are going by so fast. I can't believe it's Monday, right? It feels like it should be, I don't know, Wednesday of last week. It's so crazy. No, I organized some things here and there in my house that I haven't gotten to before, and I'm just looking forward to future trips and future work stuff. In the meantime, I play Animal Crossing.
I tell you, Chloe,
I wish I had a Switch. I'd be
living the life. The Animal Crossing craze continues. I think I've heard so many people playing. Pokemon Go is back, apparently.
Yeah.
Animal Crossing. I started playing Roller Coaster Tycoon, as I told you all on the last show.
Classic.
Hours go by in the blink of an eye. Like, I'll suddenly realize that it's 2 a.m. and I haven't eaten dinner or even gotten dressed for the day. So time is a weird thing. And I think, Chloe, you said just a little bit ago, is it Monday? That is such a common phrase right now. When I talk to people, they ask what day of the week it is. And
it doesn't matter anymore.
It happens in real life. It's just
weird stuff never happened before. Yeah, like it doesn't matter what date or day it is, really, unless it's someone's birthday you're quietly celebrating at home. Like it doesn't matter right now, and it's just such a weird phenomenon.
And we've changed as people. a year ago, if somebody had recorded a segment from home for a talk show or whatever, they would have gone out of their way to make sure that there were no distractions, no kids, that their set would look kind of as perfect as could be, that the sound would be perfect. And all that has kind of gone out of the window because even newscasters now are sitting in their living rooms or their kitchens, and the dog is walking behind them, and kids are just wandering around and opening refrigerator doors, and nobody bats an eye at it. So I think we're really getting to know the people that we watch and are influenced by more as human beings right now than at any other time in the past. And I'm really curious how all that's going to continue in the future, and what we kind of expect. Do we expect more realness out of people, and maybe even out of experiences? You know, Bill, nothing is more fabricated than theme park environment. But will people want attractions in the future that are purely escapes so they can forget this time? Or do you think they are going to start expecting more realism in their theme park experiences?
I think that's a pretty difficult question to answer. You know, I mean, anytime you look at what Disney was about in the old days, it was about this sense of optimism, with this optimistic view of the future and how wonderful things can be if we all work together and do the right thing. So it was, I think John Hench said it was all about reassurance, you know, reassuring you that somebody can do it right, that there is a better future around the corner. And I don't think that that's going away anytime soon. I think people really want there to be that reassurance, maybe now more than ever. But as far as, you know, the escapism of the theme park industry and fantasies of going into different worlds and everything, I mean, yeah, you can't, right now we can't escape our own homes. So, you know, I'd be happy just to have escapism of an urban streetmosphere somewhere. I don't know. It's a tough question to answer, though.
If you all could go to any one theme park fake world right now, which one would it be? It could be one that exists or one that's been proposed. But which escape would you want, Logan?
As cliche as it sounds, I want to go to Disneyland. I
Just
miss
in
that
general?
place. Just in general. Every single Sunday night, I edit the photos of the user submitted photos, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Makes you really want to go back.
It really does. It really does. I don't even need to go on a ride. Just
We're going to get back to
down
that
Main
later in
Street.
this show, because you edited some photos the other night that are going to make us all gain weight. Chloe, pick a magical world that you would like to go to.
I'd say Fantasyland and Disneyland Paris is my favorite.
Well, I am all in favor of that. I think that is a fantastic one. Bill, do you have a favorite fantasy world?
A fantasy world that you mean like, are we talking about a theme park? Because I mean,
A theme park one.
Yeah, a physical theme park that I'd want to go to right now is Europa Park, because they're about to reopen their Pirates of Batavia this season. And that's the attraction that is essentially not really a carbon copy, but let's be nice and say it was inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland. And they built their own version over there. And then they had a horrible fire a few years back, and they're just rebuilding the entire ride right now, and they're about to reopen that. So I'm actually really excited. I hope that, you know, gets to open up. They just put up the sign on the front of the ride, I think yesterday.
So they're still working.
Huh?
So they're still working there.
Oh yeah, they're still working on the park. The park's not open for guests, but it's just a delayed opening for their season because it's in Germany, so they're not open for the winter anyway. But Europa Park, they're a popular park. They're the second most popular theme park destination in all of Europe after Disneyland Paris.
Is that the park that has like it looks like Spaceship Earth too, and it has like a World Showcase-esque area too? I want to go there really badly. It's
a great park. I've been there a few times, and it is absolutely wonderful. That's what happens when you have a ride manufacturer build a theme park. It's incredible.
Is that the Vekoma owned park?
It's actually the Mach family. They used to build wagon wheels, and somehow that turned into roller coasters. And long story short, if you're going to sell a coaster, you have to have some place to showcase what you're building. So they said, you know, kind of like a used car lot, if you're a car salesman, let's build a theme park for, you know, all these people that might want to build a roller coaster, and maybe they'll hire us to do it. So they would invite clients to go visit their park, and then they'd say, I want that ride, I want that ride, and I want that ride. And then they'd go and build them in other parks. And that actual example park is just become bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And they even built a water park last year. So
Wow. That's
it's pretty
incredible.
crazy.
I had no idea. That is a place I have to go visit.
Yeah,
Sounds
absolutely.
amazing.
It's wonderful. And the family is actually really nice. The Mock family, I've met them and they're wonderful people.
Nice.
You know, we were just talking about the fact that they're still building there. And we heard this last week that definitely Universal Studios in Hollywood and Florida, they are still building. So they're still working on their Nintendo attractions and other things in their parks all over across the United States. And Knott's Berry Farm, we hear, is doing some construction. Disneyland and Disney World famously has stopped everything. So there's nothing going on really other than essential, maintenance and security in the Disney parks. However, we're starting to hear now that some big parks may be opening around the world. And it looks like Shanghai Disneyland is getting very close to reopening. We have photos up on MiceChat of tape 6 foot apart on the ground just outside of the front gate. The entertainers have been practicing their parades inside the park. They've even done a trial run of having the new entry procedures for the park tested. So they had some fake guests come and go through security and line up to get into the park and the whole procedure. So it looks like they're really preparing to reopen. When they might actually do it, we don't know. But it certainly looks as though they're ready to do it whenever. Their hotels have been open for about a month now, and so has their Disneytown, which is similar to Downtown Disney. So they've opened in phases. They had a phase of hotel and retail, and now it looks like they're going to enter into a phase of opening the park. Bill, have you heard of any other parks that might be opening or opened?
I haven't really heard of a park per se, but Dollywood and the region around Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, that includes Gatlinburg. It looks like they are gearing to start opening attractions nearby Dollywood. Even Hershend Entertainment, if you're not familiar, owns Dollywood.
Mm-hmm.
They also have Dolly Parton's Stampede, and it looks like that they're going to try to reopen in the next few weeks. So that might be the first, domestic park that ends up opening if they decide to open up Dollywood at the same time everything else opens up. But nothing's then cemented or confirmed besides a couple of the other attractions in the area reopening.
We heard they were going to make an announcement, but it was unclear if they were going to announce that they were going to open or not open, maybe even for the rest of the year, because it's a seasonal park, I believe. I think we're all chomping at the bit, and it looks like some states in the U.S. are starting to reopen things. So it's only a matter of time before a theme park does open. And the big question is, what will that look like? Will they simply tell guests, be careful and you're on your own at your own risk, and continue as they always did? Or will it really be a different world, and will they need to limit attendance and keep people 6 feet apart and have a whole team of people on the staff that do nothing but clean everything constantly? And I'm interested in everyone's thoughts on this, and particularly since, Bill, you're new on the show today, really interested in your thoughts on what you think might happen and that what might be a good way for the parks to actually handle it.
What I think might happen is that there will be a staggered opening. I think a lot of things that are being tested at Shanghai Disney will either prove to work or not work first over there, and then they'll adopt the better practices, and then they'll bring them out over here. Mm-hmm. I know that Disneytown out there has reopened, and it actually is quite crowded. Not, in terms of crowds that we're used to, but considering the environment, there are a lot of people that are going to Disneytown. There are even, I think there's character dining that has reopened over there. So that'll probably become a model. The important thing to remember is that Shanghai Disney is not really owned entirely by Disney. Disney actually has a minority stake. The majority ownership is by a Chinese company that's working with the Chinese government. So they kind of call the shots over there a little bit more than Disney does. But regardless, it's a great experiment to see how they reopen over there. In terms of, what would probably be best, and if anyone is kind of leading by example right now, I was really surprised, but of all places, I think Delta Airlines has really started to show what it's going to look like in the future. They produced an entire new marketing campaign called Delta Clean as their brand new cleaning standard. And it's a permanent standard. It's not just temporary, you know, just because of COVID-19 or anything. No, this is a permanent upgrade to how they're cleaning everything. And it includes fogging and sanitizing aircraft between every single flight, you know. And they used to only do it overnight, and now it's going to be every single flight forever. That'll be the standard. So I think theme parks will probably start to look at what the aviation industry is doing, because no theme park really wants to go first. I think that's a danger, you know, if you go first. And everyone expects Disney to be the leader, so their standards will probably be adopted whenever they do reopen. So it's a complicated question. I'm not sure if I, was able to answer everything, but
no, I think that's a really great observation. I had no idea about Delta. So I'm very curious about that, particularly in a theme park setting. And I think we will hear a little bit more about what Disney intends to do, mainly because Bob Iger is now on the California task force for reopening the state. And if he's going to be advising the governor on best practices and which industries can reopen, I think he would have to outline, what a theme park environment might look like. And that would be the standard that the governor would then expect theme parks and similar entertainment organizations to adopt. So I imagine that Bob Iger will be the one that sets the standard on how many people, per square foot can be in a theme park, or in a movie theater, will they have to go every other seat or more than that? And I'm very curious to see that, because that might very well set a standard for the rest of the country, since we're not hearing a lot about what businesses really should do in order to reopen. And I'm not an expert on that, but I'm very curious in what could happen. So this last week, we did have Brady McDonald, who's a journalist from the LA Times and OC Register, write an article for MiceChat about that very topic. And his thoughts on what will likely happen is that the theme parks will need to set a very low limit on the number of people that can be in the park. And on a normal day, Disneyland might average out to about 55,000 people. There are certainly days that it's less than that. There are days it's a lot more than that. But you can say that 55,000 would be an average day. And on a day like that, you would expect the lines to be about an hour long for the e-tickets or longer, which means you're going to be in a switchback queue with other strangers for an hour's time. And restaurants would be fairly busy with almost all the tables in use. And that, of course, in this COVID environment would be a no-no. So Brady thinks restaurants will go to at least 50% capacity with a lot of tables removed, that they will have to limit the number of people in the park. And to make that happen, people would have to either book their days in advance and buy all their tickets online so that they can control how many people show up, and no tickets sold at the front gate. Now, I don't want to go too far in. There are other things, and we'll talk about those too. But the ticketing in particular, people are used to just showing up at the front gate. If I'm staying at a hotel near Disneyland, or I'm at a convention at the Anaheim Convention Center, you just walk over to Disneyland's front gate and buy yourself a ticket. But then there's this risk that the park may already be filled with people and you're turning people away at the front gate. So does forcing all ticket sales online actually solve some problems, like not having to staff ticket booths and people knowing in advance whether or not there's capacity that day? What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
Well, I mean, in China, Hong Kong Disneyland actually has operated without staffing their ticket booths at all. So the model is there. I was there in Hong Kong Disneyland when they didn't have anyone at their ticket booths. There was just someone at a couple of the guest relations booths. I ended up buying an annual pass to Hong Kong Disneyland that year, because if you were there for more than 3 days, it was just cheaper to get an annual pass. Remember those days at Disneyland?
I do remember that. It's still those days at Knott's Berry Farm. You're going to be there longer than 1 day. Go ahead and get the annual pass.
Yeah. But Hong Kong Disneyland, I think, is kind of unique. If you've never been there, they're time-wise, they're about halfway between the Hong Kong International Airport and the city of Hong Kong. And their location, they have a lot of people that are on a long layover, and they really actually don't care about going to Hong Kong, but they love the idea of going to Hong Kong Disneyland. It's actually a pretty fair-sized market for that, to the point where you actually have a baggage check station at the entrance to Hong Kong Disneyland, where you can check your bags for, a couple dollars, Hong Kong dollars or whatnot, and then go and have fun in the park. And you don't want to boggle down your time, because time is of the essence when you're on a layover. So you would have already purchased your ticket online, and you just use your phone for that. So, I mean, I don't necessarily see that being a big problem about requiring someone to buy their tickets online. It's when you have tickets that have a little bit more of processing, like an annual pass if your photo's attached. But in all reality, I mean, there's no reason that you physically have to have a paper annual pass or a plastic annual pass right now.
Exactly.
Disney can update their systems to scan barcodes for proof of a pass, even for discounting. That could be done. So I know they've been a little bit slow at that. If you show an annual pass barcode, they're like, you're not supposed to do this. You have to have the plastic pass for your discount, but I'll do it this time. And you read the number to them, or they'll read the number off your phone. But no, I think that the less people have to touch something, the better off it'll be. And those are really simple changes. The bigger changes are the ones I would worry about. Like you said earlier, about capacity and limiting how many people can actually be next to you on a ride vehicle, for example, or even in the same ride vehicle. So, and are they going to be cleaning every single ride vehicle between guests? And I don't know the answer to those questions. Those are a lot harder to predict.
Those are the big questions, Bill. And from what Brady was saying, he really thinks that they will have to have attraction staff members wiping down the vehicle between every guest. And he thinks that will limit capacity on some attractions. And that's all the more reason why they also need to limit capacity inside the park. You just don't want lines to develop anywhere they don't have to. And one of the things that Disney in particular has been a leader in is creating virtual queues and virtual lines. Universal also has experimented with virtual queues, and they seem to be a very successful way of controlling the number of people at an attraction and keeping the flow going. So I do look forward to seeing what might happen there. And could that be adapted to other attractions somewhere? Obviously, if they weren't built with, no switchbacks in mind, it's going to be hard. And I think in particular, rides like Space Mountain and Big Thunder that have, huge queues with an hour wait in them, how might they allow guests to keep their physical distance but still keep the ride running? And that's what I'm trying to wrap my brain around. In order for Disneyland and Disney World to open, they really need to prove to their guests and to state health and government officials that they've come up with a plan for keeping people safe. And one of those big key issues is social distancing. So do you have any other thoughts about some maybe tips or tricks that the theme parks might employ to help keep people away from each other?
I have a few ideas. I'm not sure, though, how likely it is that you do this, because there are a lot of contractual issues that come into play for what I would describe right now. But assuming that this could happen, it's possible. You could see a world where everyone has to make a reservation, and you choose. There was something that was released at the D23 Expo that there was going to be a brand new Disney Genie app. Do you remember that?
I remember
the
Genie.
Genie app? It was going to help you plan your entire day in advance. And you'd be able to select at the beginning if you're more interested in the thrill attractions or the family attractions, or, if you're more interested in entertainment and all that. I don't necessarily see entertainment coming back anytime soon, because there's a lot of issues where you can't have, people waiting around for a fireworks show and gathering to watch that. But assuming that you are a family and you want to stay at a hotel at Walt Disney World, let's say the Contemporary, since it's right next door to the Magic Kingdom. So, and it's probably the most well-equipped to hand to a reopening. And you would probably only give people the option of entering the park at a certain time. You'd have a window and you'd go and experience the attractions, but your whole day would kind of be planned out for you by a master list. It would remove the spontaneity. And if you did that, you could actually try to minimize through a computer algorithm on how many people you'd be actually, gathering and mixing around within the park. It would almost be like if you had a personal tour guide as you navigated the park, but there's no actual person. Your tour guide is your phone telling you where to go at what time. and where you're supposed to be. I'm not sure I like that version, but that would be a possibility, let's say, of how you could manage it. Now, I don't know how that would work contractually with Disney Vacation Club members, annual pass holders, cast members that just want to visit for the day. It doesn't take into account all that. It only takes into account people that are actually staying at a Disney resort. So how do you, manage that as well? So there's a lot of questions here, and I don't really have the answers. And I've been studying the theme parks for many years, and I still don't know.
I think it's very interesting, Bill. I really like those ideas. And even if we all don't love it, it would be a way of controlling park flow and attendance in those months where it's still uncomfortable for people to think about, being near other folks and strangers. So I do think something like that may happen. It was along the lines of what Brady was saying, that maybe even day parting might be used, where instead of every guest showing up the same time in the morning, right now at Disneyland and at Hollywood Studios, for example, most guests arrive at about an hour before opening so that they can try to get a ticket to ride the new Star Wars attraction, Rise of the Resistance. Mm-hmm. Well, you wouldn't want that many people showing up a few months from now if the parks are able to reopen. So one of the ways to manage it would be to have you pick a time that you're going to enter, and only a certain number of entries per slot would be allowed. You might even have a wristband that only allows you to be in the park for a certain number of hours. And once your wristband's time has expired, you just aren't able anymore to enter shops and rides, and eventually you'll just leave on your own. Disney does that all the time now with special events. They don't sweep the parks anymore for events. You just need a wristband to be able to do anything. And at some point, the folks that don't have a wristband get bored and they leave. And that might be a way of keeping people in the park for, let's say, 6 hours. You can ride rides and they're all pre-planned for you. And then after that, you filter your way out. And it's a way for Disney to have a fewer number of people in the park, but still meet their daily attendance figures. Because if you don't do that, if you just were to say limit Disneyland, which we talked about earlier as a 55,000 person experience, and you say 20,000 people or 25,000 people can attend, well, Disney is going to have a hard time making money and paying cast members and paying for all this additional upkeep and cleaning that's going to need to be happening. So by giving them 2 sessions a day, they get to 50,000, and that's more in the range of what they need. So I think we will see some creative things happen. Also, and Logan, I'm going to get to you on this one, because this is where you and I start having trouble with all of this, and I don't think it will bother either Chloe or Bill, because they've been living in this world for a while. But in Florida, in order to fully experience the parks, you really need to plan everything in advance. So you're using the My Magic Plus experience to book what days you're going to be in what parks and what rides you're going to do in advance, right down to booking your restaurant reservations and everything. And if they were to tighten that up just a little bit, reduce capacity and force, everyone to book everything. You must have a restaurant reservation to sit down in a sit-down restaurant. You must have a reservation to ride a ride. And, maybe they are able to allow a few extra rides because there's going to be fewer people in the park at any given time. Chloe, do you think that would work? And would it bother you as a guest if you were asked to do that for your own health and safety and as a way for the park to be able to reopen?
I don't think so, especially if it's for the better of everyone, and if that's what we need to do. I feel like we're already conditioned to it, being a Disney World native, how much you have to plan. When I first went to Disneyland and I didn't have to get a dining reservation for the next hour, or fast passes are kind of like an added benefit. Fast passes are needed at Disney World. I understand they're needed sometimes at Disneyland, but Disney World, it's a way of attending the park. You have to plan out your day already. So I don't feel like there's that much adjustments to do. Yeah, I don't think I'd be upset. I'd rather that than not have them at all. So I'm okay with it.
And Bill, it's right along the lines of what you were talking about, maybe a little less complex than having to create the Genie type of software that may not be ready in time, but all they really have to do is limit the number of entries into the park and the number of sessions that are available at any given time for the Fast Pass, because the My Magic Plus experience is already timed out. So if there aren't any fast passes available at a certain time, you have to do it later in the day or pick a different ride. And they could change those numbers however they wanted to control the number of people at an attraction. So I do think it's a possible way of moving forward. But will people at Disneyland, Logan, be able to handle this sudden, very strict way of managing your experience? So what Chloe and Bill are used to at Disney World is the complete opposite of how we do things at Disneyland. Where Disneyland,
Sure is.
pass holders might show up at like noon, and then you go into the park and you ride rides, and if something's busy, you go over and you get a fast pass for it, or you book it on your phone, but it's not a necessary part of your day the way it is in Florida. But it might have to be in order for us to reopen. What do you think?
We will adjust to it if it's necessary. I do believe that, especially pass holders here, we're pretty spoiled. I mean, I'm one of them. I've shown up at noon. I've come down just for the evening, a few times, just to have dinner and go on something with a few friends or get drinks at Trader Sam's, right? It would definitely be a major change of pace than what we're used to, but I'm sure that we will adjust to it. I mean, I thought Max Pass several years ago was a groundbreaking, and it was, a change to Disneyland, but now that's become a very modern and normal part of every trip to Disneyland. And I'm still even noticing when I go, families, it seems to be just from overhearing conversations, are not having too much trouble figuring out how it works. So I think that if it comes to it, we'll figure it out.
One of the reasons that Disneyland never implemented the magic bands like they have in Disney World is because they didn't think that the locals were going to like it, and they weren't quite sure that our audience was going to be able to handle it. I think an experience like this might be their excuse to be able to implement it. And they were clearly thinking that in the future, they might want to do something similar with RFID tracking of guests, which is essentially what the Magic Band is, because they installed it in all of the rides and at the front gates. So Disneyland is built to handle the Magic Bands if they wanted, or even RFID built into your annual pass to tap at rides to gain entry. I think this might be an opportunity for them to do it. And as a pass holder, I wouldn't mind buying a cute Magic Band that buy little things to put on it, stickers and stuff. And when I go to the park, instead of having to, fumble for my pass or find it, I could simply tap my Magic Band and go get into the rides that way, limiting the number of things that I need to touch and handle, etc. So it might be an opportunity for Disney to even condition guests to do more planning at Disneyland. Even after they've loosened things up, it might benefit Disney in some way. And so there may be some positive sides.
I do think we're going to see some positives come out of this, because I think it's tough to see right now because we're only a month in and this is not nearly over, not even close to being over. So we're going to see some major changes, I think, over the next year and a half. But I do think once things start to let up, people are going to not only be more clean when they visit public places and just more aware of their surroundings, but I do think that there will be technology and stuff that comes out of this to where we will find a happy medium in between, right? I do think we'll go back to our spontaneous, trips. I'm going to have to plan everything out, but there will also be tools in place that can make it a better experience for us.
And we haven't really gotten into everything, and we'll have many, many conversations like this on this show in the coming months. But I wanted to give you all some food for thought, because Brady's article really struck a nerve with people, had a tremendous amount of traffic, and people on both sides of the issue. Those really thanking him for just putting out there all the different ways a theme park might control the flow of guests and make sure that fewer people are in each area than you might normally find. And it's one way of the parks potentially moving forward. We didn't even bring up checking temperatures and all of those other things that wearing masks that guests might be asked to do. But I wanted to start that conversation going and have everybody out there think about what are things you would be willing to do that would allow a park to operate with maybe 15 to 20,000 guests at any given time, but still have Disney have enough guests flow through that park over the course of the day that they make enough money to make this all worthwhile for them to be open. And that also keeps the guests inside that park as safe as they can be. So give some thought to that and let us know in the comments down below what you think might be done. And also in the coming shows, we'll discuss it a little bit more. So you can even write to us. If you write to podcast@micechat.com, you can let us know your ideas, and we're happy to bring them up and discuss them on the show. In fact, we really encourage you to reach out to us that way. So leave us notes in the comments below, or write to us if you'd like at podcast@micechat.com. We look forward to hearing from you. I'd like to shift to something really exciting and kind of positive and fun. And if you were reading MiceChat on Monday of this week, you saw in our Monday update that we had aerial photos of the Disneyland resort. And it is mind-boggling what we learned, because what you can see over a construction fence or from Mickey's Fun Wheel, which I think is now called the Pal Around, I just can't bring myself to say it, is so much different than what you can see from directly overhead from a helicopter in the images that we got. And I'd like to go over a couple of those things. You all have your MiceChat updates up, I'm sure, so you know what I'm talking about here. The first thing, I'm going to start over at the far north end of the resort where Toontown is, and that big giant project that you guys see on the screen right now is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And you can see that the big dirt lot there is about as wide. It's actually a little wider than Toontown. When the building is constructed, it'll be almost exactly the footprint of Toontown, but behind Toontown. I had no idea that that attraction was so massive, but I guess they have to, because it was originally your favorite ride, Chloe, over at Hollywood Studios, the great movie ride, and they're porting it over to Disneyland. And so now we have this Disney World-sized show building that's going in at the back of Toontown. It's really incredible to see.
What I was wondering was what Disneyland's version would look like. First of all, Runaway Railway is perfect for Toontown. It is made for Toontown. But the ride buildings from Great Movie Ride are massive. And I've heard that Kevin Rafferty actually fought for Great Movie Ride because he wanted those massive show buildings that are already in place. And I was wondering if Disneyland would also just copy those massive show buildings. There's a couple of scenes where you're in a room and the ceiling is just endless. It's huge. It really immerses you in the attraction. So I think it's needed. But it's going to be quite a sight line at Toontown if you can see the show building. So hopefully they have something in the works to kind of hide that a little bit.
Well, I have no idea how tall the building will be, but we know now that it is going to be absolutely massive in its footprint. I would guess that it is going to be a very tall show building. It's there at the back of Toontown, and currently when you're inside the area there in Toontown, you see the Team Disney Anaheim building, which is an administrative building that runs along the freeway and is clearly visible now from inside the park. But once they build this new attraction building, they can put the Toontown Hills up on the outside of that building, and you won't know it's there. We had fake hills up there before that they've had to take down for the construction. So I'm not sure it will really look all that different to guests once the show building is built, depending on how deeply they're able to build the basement in it and how high they have to go. So we'll see. I am excited for it. The one thing that worries me, Bill, is that with all of this downtime, the longer the parks are down, the more money they lose, the more likely it probably is, and you know where I'm going with this, that they push this project off a while or possibly even cancel it. I think it'd be hard to cancel it at this point, but there's certainly precedent for that in the Disney world, isn't there?
Well, I mean, just ask Pop Century, because that half of the hotel never got built. You know, I remember right after 9/11, we delayed a lot of stuff in Florida. I can say, though, that if it's underway with construction at Walt Disney World at the time, if it was inside the park, it pretty much got finished if they had gotten past a certain point. So in Florida, I would definitely expect, you know, for example, the Guardians of the Galaxy coaster to open. I would expect the Tron coaster at Magic Kingdom to open. They might be delayed, but they'll still happen. But at Disneyland, you know, I don't have a whole lot of experience about what it was like out there. I remember that it actually spurred more construction to get more attendance at California Adventure eventually after they approved the Tower of Terror to go out there. But yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know how far along Runaway Railway is, but assuming the show building is done, you know, once that building is up, they can take as long as they like to finish the inside.
Yeah.
And we had a long delay with ours anyway.
I think you're right. In Florida, the show building is mostly done for Guardians of the Galaxy, and the Tron coaster has its track already in mostly. So they're too far along to stop. But the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at Disneyland is just a dirt lot. And you can see they've created the outline for the show building. So they put the footers in, but it's still a dirt lot. There's no concrete slab in yet, which means that the electrical and the plumbing and all that stuff really hasn't been completed. So I think it's probably not nearly as far along as, say, the Star Wars Hotel, which everybody's talking about now, will likely be delayed at Disney World for some time. So we'll see what happens. I don't want people to get their hopes up that that's going to open sooner rather than later. And I am hoping that Disney is progressive on continuing projects once they do reopen. I think they're going to need new things to entice visitors back. Their annual pass holders are going to show up no matter what. But to get folks from Kansas and Germany and Japan and other places to feel comfortable traveling, going to have to hook them with some good deals and some good new attractions, I think, to get that pump primed again. It's going to take a little while for people to forget this pandemic, I think.
Oh, for sure.
The longer that we are sheltering in place, I think the harder this is going to be for all of us. But moving on from that project, we go over the hub of Disneyland. You see that big circle there, folks? That is the central hub of Disneyland. That's the castle over there on the right. And you can see that I've circled two areas on either side of the hub. The one circle is the Frontierland entrance, and the other is sort of where you head up the parade route along not the Big Thunder Trail, but the Matterhorn Way towards Small World. And both of those areas have been completely ripped up. So that happened just the day after Disneyland closed. So at that time, they were still planning on doing work. They thought they were going to be able to get all sorts of construction and stuff done while there was no one in the parks. But only 2 days later, they had to clear everyone out of the parks and stop all construction projects. So those two areas are still ripped up. So there is some work that still needs to be completed at Disneyland before they reopen the parks. And I think what we've been talking about is that they will probably do what Shanghai Disneyland did and start phased openings of the resort. So they might open a hotel, some restaurants, allow some of the vendors in downtown Disney to reopen, and then they probably will open up their construction projects in the park and get the Haunted Mansion refurbishment done and get the hub project done at that time. So it's interesting to see that there's a major project like that that was started very optimistically and then abandoned almost immediately. But how much of it they were able to get done? They ripped up all of that concrete in just a day. So it's really pretty incredible to see from overhead like that. And we're going to zoom just a little bit further into California Adventure. And what we're looking at here is Marvel Land. That is Avengers Campus. And it is really neat to see this, folks, because we have not had a clear idea on how far along that project is until today. We knew that the Spider-Man ride was nearly done because we could see from outside that the brickwork was up and that the paint was already on the building. It looked amazing. But from a distance, it sure did look like the buildings at the back of the land were nowhere near complete. But we can see from these images that although there's a dirt lot in the central area and it doesn't take very much time at all to put in concrete and planters, it's the buildings that take the time and they're completely framed up. So that's a very encouraging sign. That project will absolutely be delayed by at least the number of days that the parks have been closed. So we know that instead of a July opening, that this project was been pushed at least a month or so now. And by the time this is all over, count the number of days that the parks were closed. That's at least how many days that it's going to be until that land is open. I do think that because of the extraordinary nature of this closure and the length of it, people will be a little more forgiving if Disney doesn't open things completely. So I don't think there's that pressure on them to open all of Marvel Land. I think they could open just the Spider-Man ride, which is right there on the parade route, and take their time getting the rest done if they wanted to.
With permits, how do permits work out in Orange County, California, and inside the city of Anaheim? Because that might give you an idea on how much stuff can be shifted, if it's allowed to be shifted or not. I know in Florida, once you start, work on a project, you have X number of days, depending on how long the permit was pulled for, to finish unless you request an extension, and that process, usually the county here always says yes. I know in Anaheim, though, it's a little bit different because of the political climate out there. So I would, look at your permits too. That might give you an idea on what will happen and what won't.
In normal times, it definitely would give us an idea, but because Disneyland has suspended all operations, and the city has as well, it was at the advice of the city, they're clearly going to give Disneyland wide latitude to get restarted, whereas they normally probably wouldn't. There's another big project that is probably more concerning in regards to permits, and that's the new hotel. They have requested permits to build this new tower at the Disneyland Hotel, but it hasn't been approved yet. It's in pending status, but Disneyland's now not doing construction. Who knows if they'll even want to build that tower? That's the one that I'm really keeping an eye on, because I'm really curious if that project's going to happen at all. I think for sure we're going to see Marvel Land finish. It's phase 2. The Avengers coaster may never happen. Or it may happen at a later date. I think that's the thing that we're going to look at in the park. The big attraction that's on the way, that's probably most in jeopardy, is the Bob Chapek announced second phase of Avengers Campus. So he announced that at the D23 Expo, but who knows if that'll really happen. The other one, maybe a little more likely to happen, but maybe pushed off a little bit, would be Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Let's look in a little bit further in this construction site, though, folks. I want you to see quickly how far along the Spider-Man ride is there. We're going to shift over. That is the PYM test kitchen. And somebody, I've never seen the Avengers films. Is it PYM or PIM, or what do they call that?
It's a PIM particle is what it's based on.
PIM
it's,
particle. Okay, so
yeah,
now I know, and I know that they play with the size of food, so they call it a microbrewery, which is a play on words since he's an Ant-Man. Got it, folks? So some food is going to be really little, and some is going to be really big, and it'll all be on the same plate. Isn't that clever? And then across from that is where the new Avengers attraction will eventually be, but it's going to be a shop at first there. And on the top of that, see some concept art there. That is what it looks like with the Quinjet on the roof. But if we look just behind there, we'll see that there's a tarp covering something that is very clearly the Quinjet. So thanks to our super spy from high in the sky, we have the first sign that really all the big set pieces have arrived for Avengers Campus, and that jet is right there just waiting to be lifted up on the top of that building. So that's pretty exciting. It was a neat thing to see because there's so little for us to now talk about from inside the park, right? Because everything was stopped. So we've really kind of talked about it all. And then we found this big giant thing about their upcoming land. And I was so stoked to see that the other night when I was zooming in on the image and processing it and getting ready for the Monday update. It was really enthralling and exciting for me. I just want the parks to be open, and look, there's this exciting new thing that's there to tempt us, just hiding backstage. So that was really, really cool to see. I know, Logan, you were looking at the update. What did you think about the photos from Avengers Campus?
I think they were encouraging, I think I would say. I mean, like you were saying, it's tough to get certain angles and vantage points from the pal around. So to see it overhead, you really do get a sense of just how far along they were. And I remember, I think it was a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how close they really were if a July opening was already pushing it. And now I could kind of see why they were confident that that was the date they wanted to open on before the whole COVID thing happened.
Yeah, and you can really see how large the land is. A lot of folks in our previous update commented on how poorly designed Avengers Campus was for a post-COVID environment because it looked like it was going to be really cramped, unlike Galaxy's Edge. So in this land, eventually there will be 3 attractions because there will be the Spider-Man ride off the parade route. There's the Guardians of the Galaxy Tower in the back of the land, and then next to that will be this new Avengers ride, sort of based on a Quinjet, and you'll be flying it or something to that effect. So there will be 3 big major e-ticket attractions in one smallish land. But we can see now from the overhead that there is quite a bit of space in that land. some large plazas and things and spaces for them to put characters and so forth. So the land itself, although it doesn't sprawl like a Galaxy's Edge, it's probably more akin to an Adventureland or something where there are lots of attractions in a smaller area, but there's plenty of space there, I think. And encouraging that they have several shops and that big restaurant there. And the one area that we really couldn't see from the angle of the helicopter is that Doctor Strange garden area that they're going to be building, which sounds like a Jedi training academy for whatever it is Doctor Strange is. Is he magical?
Yes, he is.
Okay, there you go. That's how in tuned I am to this new land. And I'm sort of the test case for, will a Disney fan who knows everything about all the Disney movies that have ever been made, even if I haven't seen the movie, I'm aware of it if it's an animated film. So when they build something in the parks that's based on the Disney legacy, I'm, pretty much up on it, whether or not it's one of my favorite franchises. But on Star Wars and Marvel and that kind of stuff, I'm not as familiar, and I imagine that a lot of Disney fans aren't. And the question is really, will the fans embrace it? And I think that from what Bill and I were talking about earlier with the opening of Star Wars Land, maybe not as many will be excited about a Marvel until it becomes part of their Disney experience. So after years of going on it, it will probably feel more Disney to them. And I can't remember back, I think, Bill, you were still a young lad, but when they opened Indiana Jones and Star Tours, neither of which were Disney franchises, they were licensing those at that time. I think people were a lot more excited about those than they seemed to be with Millennium Falcon when that opened. But how long did it take for you to feel like those were Disney to you?
Well, at that time, I want to say that everything was based on when stuff opened in Florida for me, based on those properties, on Indy, and that was really when the Disney MGM studios opened. Because we had the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, and not long after opening it, in the first year or two after opening, we had Star Tours in Florida. And I was never into Star Wars growing up. And I also didn't like simulators like Star Tours either. I remember when Body Wars opened at Epcot, and it's like, that'll just make you sick. And I avoided it for many, many years and everything. I didn't go on, I think, the Indiana Jones adventure in California until 98, I want to say. I didn't go on it, back in, when it opened. It opened in 95, right? But we had the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular in Florida. So I loved Indy, and I always treated it as, hey, it's not Disney, but it's here. But it kind of fit in that park because there was a lot of stuff in the Disney MGM studios that wasn't Disney, and it's here. So I think that it's a little bit different when you build something that's not Disney in a park where there's a lot of stuff that's not Disney anyway. That's my opinion of the Disney MGM studios. When you go to Disneyland and you go to Galaxy's Edge today, I hear people say, okay, I'm tired of this. Can we go back to Disneyland? And this is what I heard, from maybe a 15-year-old, in a family walking through Galaxy's Edge. And like, oh my gosh, it doesn't feel like you're in Disneyland. That's what the problem is. It just doesn't feel like you're in the same park. But would it do better in California Adventure? Who knows? There's been a lot of stuff in California Adventure that's not necessarily Disney. When I think of the Golden Valley, Bountiful Valley Farms, or whatever it was in the old days, and the winery and all that, that's not really Disney, but it's California culture, so you accept it that it's there. Even Ghirardelli has only become a Disney thing in the last 15 years. So I don't know. I'll give it a chance. I think that's a better idea. I guess Ghirardelli's been there for longer than 15. It's been 20 years. Wow. But nothing wrong with my brain. But but the factory tours, that was when Michael Eisner was obsessed with factory tours. That's why you had the, let's make some bread, let's make some tortillas.
And I think you bring up such a great point about where something is built matters. And in these Magic Kingdom style parks, people have been conditioned to expect Disney style attractions. So even though Indiana Jones and Star Tours were built at Disneyland in the early days, those attractions were built in a very Disney kind of format and style. So Indiana Jones isn't unlike the over-the-top spectacle of a Splash Mountain or what have you. It's comical. There's a lot of humor. It still feels safe to you, even though they're taking you to a scary thing. So it's built in the same sort of corny Disney-ish style that matches the rest of your Disney experience. Disney attractions tend to not take themselves too seriously. Star Tours was always a funny attraction. So, and I'm like you, Bill, I hate simulators, but I've always loved Star Tours because it was fun. And Disney added the story and the whimsy to it that made it feel like Disneyland to me. So even though I always knew it wasn't Disney until they bought it, and it doesn't feel like Disney to me, it was Disneyland-ish enough. Whereas Galaxy's Edge, which I do like, doesn't feel like Disneyland to me, and I think is very poorly placed and would probably be better at California Adventure. And everything at California Adventure I'm fine with. They can plug anything they want in there because that park to me has never been a Disney storytelling park. It's really more about Pixar and other things, and it's a mishmash. Soarin' had nothing to do with Disney. That was their big ride. Grizzly River Rapids, there was no IP on that. That had nothing to do with Disney. So all their big attractions, their California Screamin', there was no Disney to that. So all their biggest attractions when they opened had nothing to do with Disney. So if they wanted to put anything into that park with a story, I was happy. And I think that where things go does matter, but that's neither here nor there. We'll see how it goes with the Marvel Land when it opens. I think it will do better at California Adventure than if they'd put it in Tomorrowland, let's say. And for some time there, they were talking about redoing Tomorrowland and making it themed to the Avengers in some way or the Marvel Universe. And I'm so glad they didn't, because I think it would have suffered from the same problems that Galaxy's Edge does at Disneyland, that it just isn't a Disneyland experience. But I think it will fit just fine at California Adventure. And as long as there's fun story and interactive elements with your favorite superhero and the kids aren't scared away by it, I think it'll be more popular than, maybe it might be in another place. Logan, are you looking forward to the Marvel stuff?
Oh yeah, I really am. I've loved all the movies, and I'm not a big comic book guy. I didn't really pay attention to any comic books. Batman, I know Batman isn't Marvel, but I'm talking Batman, DC, or Marvel until really the movies came out. And I've loved the cinematic universe, and I'm not going to come out here and say that they're the most well-made movies ever, but they're fun. I think they get big crowd reactions. And I mean, I am someone who as long as I've been alive, Indiana Jones Adventure has been at Disneyland. I wanted to watch the Indiana Jones movies because I love the ride so much. So for me, that's Disney. Like that is Disney to me. And that's what I grew up. When I watch Indiana Jones, I immediately think of the ride. So I do think that, and I think this will be the same for Galaxy's Edge too, especially now that Rise of the Resistance is open, is that people and kids will grow up slowly and just become accustomed to it. And even for me, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I do really enjoy Galaxy's Edge, but even I will admit that it definitely does not feel like Disneyland, at least right now. Well, if they add some shows in, if they lighten it up a little bit, we can talk about that, in the future and see what they do to change it. But I do think that when I bring it back to Marvel, I think that a theme park land for Marvel is going to do really good, because all these kids are going to grow up knowing that it's in Disneyland, and when they see Marvel movies, they will just automatically now associate it with Disney.
Yep. And Bill and Chloe, there is very little Marvel in the Florida parks because of some weird licensing agreements with Universal. Would you like to see more Marvel happen in the Florida parks? And do you think it's even possible? I'm going to throw this to Bill first. Is it even possible for Disney to get that license back from Universal so they can leverage their Marvel ownership in the Florida parks?
Well, anything is possible if you throw enough money toward it, I suppose. The way the Universal contract is set up, Universal owns the rights to Marvel in a theme park setting for any Marvel property that they've already used in their theme park east of the Mississippi River in perpetuity. And there's only two ways that contract can be bought out. Well, one of them is if they were to buy it out. The other way is if they can prove in a court of law that Universal's treatment of the Marvel brand has actually hurt the Marvel brand, which I don't think anyone in their right mind would say that. And if anything, I think The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is one of my all-time favorite attractions in any park anywhere.
Yes.
And they've kept it up incredibly well. So no, it would be a very large check that would have to be written. And there's not really a point of doing it either, because Universal actually pays a portion of, I'm not entirely sure the financial arrangement on what they get, but they get a portion of something as a licensing fee, and that goes to Marvel, which now goes to Disney. So anytime anybody goes down to Adventure and goes on those Marvel attractions or buys Marvel merchandise, Disney is making money off of it. So I don't see a reason to stop that. Same thing with Simpsons now, really. It's weird, but yeah, if you go to Universal's parks, Disney has an attraction there in a weird sort of way.
Interesting. And now Disney owns Simpsons, which is in the Universal Park. They own Marvel, which is in the Universal Parks. Yeah. I just wonder, you know, some years ago, do you remember when they traded a sports announcer for Oswald? So Universal got one of Disney's sports announcers, and Universal gave them Oswald back, because over the years, of course, Oswald became Universal property. And I wonder if there's not some other sort of a trade that Universal and Disney might want to make, so that maybe Universal gives Disney Marvel, and then Disney gives Universal The Simpsons, or something like that, because I think there's got to be a way for Disney World to get Marvel. It feels like there needs to be a Marvel big something there. If it fits anywhere, it's Disney World, right? They put it in the studio park or something, but there needs to be some Marvel over there. And I hope Disney's able to find a way to make it work, or that maybe even Universal finds the way and makes it possible. But I sure do feel like The Simpsons fit better at, don't you feel like The Simpsons fit better at Universal than if Disney would hope to one day try to put them into one of the Disney parks?
No. I hope that never happens.
I have no comment on that. It's on Disney Plus as its own section. So
that's right.
I think Bob Iger is a huge fan of The Simpsons.
Oh boy. So I don't want to keep this going too long, because we could talk all night, and this show is already our longest one ever. But there's one last thing that we like to do on every show, and that's lift everybody up and leave on a positive note. And this week, we finished our Monday Disneyland update with some really great pictures submitted to us by our own readers of their favorite snack at Disneyland. And I got to tell you, I was starving when I was done working on that article, but those photos were all processed by Logan. So you actually went onto our Facebook group and picked through all of the photos that they submitted. You had to watermark them all and upload them, write all of the text on all of it. So tell us, Logan, of all those pictures you saw, what was your favorite snack item, or would you have one of your own?
So out of all the pictures I saw, I think I hadn't tried it, but I wanted to try, I think it was the Sorcerer Mickey, I think it was a milkshake or some sort of smoothie.
From Schmoozies.
And that was, I've never tried it. It just looked really appealing. So I would say out of all the photos submitted, that was my favorite. I will give my personal favorite snack is super basic. I love the Mickey pretzels. That's it. I'm not going sweet. I'm going with the Mickey pretzel. I have one almost every single time I go. And I love them.
You can't be faulted. It's got to be one of the top sales for Disney as far as snack foods go. Pretzels are right up there. Chloe,
also,
what's your... Yes? I
want to throw, if we're doing a sweet one, because it didn't make it into the photos, was if I'm going to give a sweet treat, the churro toffee, I think it is.
Well, it did make it in because I added it in.
Oh, it is in there?
Because that's my favorite item.
Oh, well, I'm going to stop talking then.
In fact, I would love to be able to make them at home, and I saw somebody posted a recipe, so we're going to try and make the cinnamon churro toffee at home, but it's just the same old toffee square, but dipped in white chocolate and rolled in cinnamon sugar. And folks, it's the best. It may be the best snack in the whole Disneyland resort. I'm just leaving it there. I'm just saying. I know them as fighting words. So I can hear people out there screaming, "Oh, Dusty, no, it's the churros," or "No, it's the popcorn." I hear you, folks. I hear you. I'm just saying you're wrong. It's the churro toffee. Chloe, what's your
So
favorite
good.
snack in the Disney parks? I'm going to let you go in any Disney park and not just Disneyland.
Okay, well, I'm picking two, and they're both exclusive to Walt Disney World. Which one do I do first? So the school bread at the Norway Pavilion.
Oh,
down
yes.
to the Kringla Bakery.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. If I'm spending a good amount of time in the World Showcase, I have to go there and get one. It's not overly sweet. It's kind of like a sweet dinner roll almost, but it's filled with vanilla custard and then topped with shredded coconut. And I'm a coconut girl. I love it.
That sounds great. You had
then-
me at custard.
Yeah, it's really good. And then my favorite soft serve is a citrus swirl, which is only found at Magic Kingdom. I like Dole Whips a lot. I usually go for the loaded Dole Whip at Disneyland, but citrus swirl wins me whenever I'm at Magic Kingdom. It's so
And
good.
is that like an orange Dole Whip, but with ice cream, vanilla ice cream?
It's not like a Dole Whip. It's a combination of like this frozen tangy orange slush, but it's more frozen than a slushy would be, mixed with vanilla soft serve. So it has like a sweet tangy taste to it. There is a Dole Whip version of the citrus swirl that's vegan. It's like a non-dairy version. I haven't had that because I can't go away from the usual citrus swirl. I heard it's not good either. Oh my gosh, a story time. They actually took away the original citrus swirl and replaced it with the Dole Whip non-dairy one. And I wrote, along with many other people, to bring the original one back, and they brought it back. And the next time I told the cast member, I was like, I wrote for this citrus swirl to come back. Like, I have to get it. And she gave it to me for free. She was really sweet. It was a little moment. She's like, thank you for bringing it back because it's my favorite too.
I tell you, folks, we take snacking seriously here. And I think the more often you go to a theme park, the more important food is to you. And it's just the only reason I go to Knott's Berry Farm anymore. I mean, I love the old-fashioned rides, but number one reason I go is for the food. Look, there's your little orange bird. There he is. He's made quite the resurgence on all sorts of clothing, and there's a women's dress, and he's been made into a purse and all sorts of things. Back from the dead. Bill, tell us about your favorite theme park snack. You can even go beyond Disney if you want.
Oh gosh. Well, I so many choices. What I wish I had was probably, well, I love the citrus swirl. I wish I had some of the bread from Dollywood. They have this amazing cinnamon bread that's fresh over there.
Oh my God, I love that
That's
bread.
really good. But I'm an equal opportunity snackist, so I love my pumpkin juice from the Wizard of World of Harry Potter and Mickey Premium ice cream bars.
I love it. He's actually there eating a real Mickey Premium ice cream bar.
That's great. That's
And
great.
I'm good. I'm at the
how
grocery
on
store
earth
usually.
did you keep that from melting during this long show?
I have a cooler beneath my feet.
That is the best. That desk is off the
Oh,
hook.
that's great.
That is incredible. Folks, I feel so inadequate now. I want a big desk, and
You didn't
I'm
even
going
say hi
to. You
to
know what I
Al.
need? I need one of those Benihana style tables on the top, so that while we're on the show, they can be chopping up shrimp and vegetables. Oh, sounds
This
delicious.
is quality content.
I've been cooped up a long time. Folks,
That's
we have
awesome.
laughed. We have cried. We have very nearly died, and we have reached the end of our journey here on today's MiceTube Live. But the fun never stops at MiceChat.com, and we encourage you all to join us online for our new articles every day, and go on over to Facebook and join that MiceChat Facebook group, because all day long, every day, sharing photos and stories and stuff. So if you get bored, you don't have to be. We have a whole community of folks that are chit-chatting away all day long. There's a reason they call us MiceChat. It's because we were formed as a community. And in times like this, we really encourage you to get out there and share your adventure with other friends and make new friends. And Bill, we have to thank you for that. You're the one who actually discovered that they were allowing people to form groups on Facebook, and you took the MiceChat group name right away so that we wouldn't lose it and have somebody else steal it away from us. So you're sort of the forefather of the MiceChat Facebook group, and I have to thank you for that.
Oh, no
and you're there
worries.
chatting away some days too. So Folks, you can chat with Bill and Chloe and Logan and I online all day long, every day. We're staying up late to chit-chat through the night even. I don't even sleep anymore. Who sleeps?
MiceChat.
We'll be back with you again real soon.
MiceChat.